Thanks for joining us for the second panel, which is on the topic of Communities 3.0 and virtual communities. We have 4 guests on our panel. You can see 3 of them now, and one is having slight connection problems, and I think Luuk will be joining us. Here he is now. I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves and give us a podcast or a book that you're working with and listening to now that means something to you. We'd love to have those recommendations. So Michelle, may I start with you?
Sure. My name is Michelle O'Connor. I'm the Vice President of Marketing at TaxBit, a cryptocurrency tax software provider. I have been in the crypto space for quite a few years, and a book I'm reading right now that I really enjoy is called Radical Candor.
Thank you for that. Luuk, could you go second?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Luuk. I'm originally from the Caribbean, from Curacao. I've been involved in DAOs for the past 3-ish years. One book that I'm enjoying currently is Token Economy by Sherman Voigtsmeer. It's one of my colleagues, and she's currently in Curacao researching the potential for an impact economy there, and I'm super excited about working with her.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Luuk. Anita.
Hello all. I'm Anita Erker, and I'm leading marketing team at superhero.com, which is a decentralized peer-to-peer open source product built on Eternity blockchain. And currently I'm discovering Clubhouse because I'm a big lover of the podcasts, and also I can recommend the other one, which is not happening there, which is Lead to Scale, episodes about the decentralized social media, which is currently my focus.
Brilliant. Thank you for those 2. Juan David.
Hi everyone, here Juan David from Bogota, Colombia. I'm the status lead community for LATAM, and actually I have this book. It's quite thick. Is about vigilance of the capitalism, was La Era del Capitalismo, like the age of capitalism in the age of vigilance. So this is something that we do in a status. We are creating tools for private communications and a decentralized world. So it's a hard reading, but it's something that we are pushing our efforts towards a better future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. We are absolutely thrilled to have you each with us. For our session today, it would be wonderful to first establish a definition of sorts for Community 3.0, and then maybe we can look into why do these communities need to form, or why are they starting to form, and then what are the benefits? What are the benefits that they can gain, Communities 3.0, from the blockchain rails and Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies? So if we start with what is it, and then why do we need it? Anita, may I start with you? How do you think about or define Communities 3.0?
Absolutely. And I would like to share my definition of it. So we all know the history of the communities. Community previously meant meaning it's connected by geographic and by interest. It's usually a group of the people in the same, country or place or neighborhood. Then we got the definition is scaled when social media occurred and internet. So the community is more connected with a purpose and using online tools in order to talk, share experience, find the purpose, design and talk about its identity and roadmap and so on. And then what's happening now is absolutely different, and that's 3.0. It's a blockchain technology which allows communities to also develop the rules, to set the rules, to tell what's needed, not just to be part of the tool which is designed for them, but also to design the tool which is needed for them in order to show their purpose and engage people, and also set the rules which are needed for that engagement, and so on. So Communities 3.0, from my point of view, is open source, decentralized environment when there's no central entity or anyone who can simply, delete or block the member or tell the member, this is your role, you're the head of members or whatever. But everyone needs to find the consensus with a tool. What's the role, what they're going to do, and at least 50% of the community needs to agree upon, what is the next step in order that to be active. So shortly, that's the definition I'm seeing and following, and looking forward to hear, guys, your definitions, and then hopefully to talk a little bit more about that.
Luuk, I want to make sure we actively include you, even though you're not moving that much. Definition, how do you think about Communities 3.0?
I would say that, to me, Communities 3.0 is mainly about freedom, and the freedom to decide what values and what values you want to align yourself with, which objective you want to go after, and really the freedom to coordinate with people with similar mindsets, or at least with similar objectives. I'm a bit scared about kind of majority votes determining everything. I think it's not the most inclusive way, and it also kind of creates separation communities. But I do feel that by having the freedom to decide for yourself if you want to be part of one community or 50 communities, you can really express yourself better and feel better with the people around you. So for me, it's really about this openness, about being able to determine and create your own infrastructure and your own set of rules and values.
Juan David?
I will go. We have seen a lot of whys with our speakers. I will go with the how, and I will focus on ownership. I really like when we create communities where you feel part of that and you are doing an effort. You enter, and this great group of volunteers of DoinGud and all the power that is Manu putting on this community is a way to make a sustainable way to be part of this. So, for example, in a status, what we try to do is to create tools for people that participate in a conversation, but they can also get tokens and they can be part of the conversation because you are adding value without expecting anything in exchange. But there is a challenge for you to be constantly participating on the growth of the community. So the Web 3.0, that is another way to see that the last part of Community 3.0, we are talking about that ownership economy, because your efforts are going to be rewarded for being part of this.
Michelle, how do you see that?
I think everyone has really hit the points that I would have spoken to. Luuk pushed a button that I'm incredibly sensitive to. And while the idea of decentralization is important, and I love conversations that can be had without someone coming in and, like Anita said, hitting, delete or block or whatever, there's such a tough line to go between. Is if there isn't consensus, or if it's a contentious consensus where the community almost is split because of a decision, I've seen that go a negative way. And there's just this, this community that was previously shared mine goes two ways because they can't get past a point of contention for a number of reasons. I do think it's incredibly powerful and aligns with the concept of what crypto is doing to empower and globalize and remove the concept of borders or systems in which we're traditionally used to communicating, where if you look at social media now, it's easy to block or avoid or anything. And I think the open communication can also bring a lot of understanding and education forward.
Would you mind if we just went off piste for a moment on this topic that you've just hit on, Michelle, that Luuk mentioned to us, and that is, you said in the case of a split, what is the better solution? What is the better next action in the case of a split?
It's a challenge, and I don't know if I have the answer to it. If you look at what's happening in crypto, you see forks, and some of those projects didn't go very well. So it's an idea where if there's a point of contention or you can't hit a quorum or a consensus, the concept where there could be a team that's voted to represent and kind of tie break or go, okay, if we can't hit consensus, how do we move forward an idea? But then if those are all aligned in one way versus the other, I don't know if there's an answer yet, but I think if there's a way to have conversations that are tough and move forward, or put a pin in something and come back to it, is really where we're all learning to explore these uncomfortable areas of human nature. I have 2 kids, so I see my daughter have to navigate, in her little world. They don't agree on something, but they all kind of just forget about it for a minute and move forward onto something else and then come back to it and resolve it. So I don't have an answer yet, but I'm hoping as we explore these muscles more of having contention, but then wanting to arrive at consensus, we can get used to that.
Yeah, they do. The kids do often have a very simple, straightforward, and awfully functional solutions. Juan David, could you give us a sense of in what ways do blockchain and Bitcoin create spaces to create spaces that deliver value for people? How have you seen that?
One of my favorite examples, and when I started Ethereum Bogota, is to talk about crypto art. I remember our second meetup was about different Latin artists that were making a living out of their art. So for the people on the other side of the screen, you are having the typical story of the poor artist, the artist that dies with no money. Van Gogh, like great artist, but after a while, all the people recognize his work. But what that happened, because there's no attribution of the creation and of the economic rights to the work that you have been doing. So there's a word, you can see that on Twitter a lot on the headlines, the famous NFTs. So for the first time, we're having a certification of a piece of work that now we can enjoy through Instagram, Twitter, and the different social media, a beautiful piece of art. But now the artist can say, okay, I'm going to create this certification, and I'm going to transfer to a collector to have that NFT. So now we can track how this piece of art moves from different hands, but there's going to be royalties for that artist. So we're creating value, we're creating a new market. Obviously, this is a hot topic, it's polemic, because the secondary market is starting to be overcrowded and it's going to be a hierarchy again. But there are different ways, and I really like also a project here led by Bea Ramos from Venezuela and Judith Mann from Mexico that is called Dada Art. So they are trying to think about an invisible economy, to think about these new rules. So we are creating a space for artists to get their value, but also to collaborate. And blockchain is being the backbone for this.
Thank you for that. Luuk, have you got an example in mind of how blockchain and Bitcoin cryptocurrencies have created spaces to deliver value for communities?
Yeah,
how are they using the tools?
I think my most remarkable moment was about a year ago. So we launched CuraDAO, which is a social impact DAO in Curacao about 2 years ago. It started off as a grants giving DAO, and one of the first grants that we gave away was to a group of teenagers who requested, I believe it was $150 in cryptocurrencies to organize a beach cleanup with over 70 people. Now, we asked them, why are you coming to us? Because there's so many other ways you could have gotten that amount of money. I mean, it's not that much for what you're trying to do. And the reason was they are not allowed to start an organization because they're under 18. They're not allowed to open a bank account because they don't have an organization. And they have worked with governments and they've worked with but they never ask them, what do you need? They always tell them, we got this yada yada project with social sustainability and impact and whatever, come help us. But no one asked them, what would you need to empower the 70 people around you that want to do cleanups as well? So they came to us, they submitted a proposal, it got accepted, they did all the MetaMask things, and it was quite natural to them. The only weird part was the fact that Ethereum's price was going up and down, which they didn't quite get, which is something we solved further down the road with a stablecoin. But really seeing this younger generation that understand entrepreneurship. If you ask them, what do you want to become? They say, I don't want to work for a boss. I want to do something that I like, my passion, my this. I want to be a vlogger, an artist, you name it. And really seeing that by giving them an infrastructure, they managed to pull it off. They managed to bring 70 people together, clean over 70 containers of trash. And they did that on a very small budget, more efficient than any other governance organized system would have done. And they did it with love and with happiness. So just seeing how this crazy technology that we are bringing into the world is able to manifest and really have a physical impact on the world, that really changed my mind, or really convinced me that this is the only way to go.
Anita, have you got an example you can share with us?
Yes, absolutely. And all of the speakers pointed out very well. So it's all about the transfer of the value, responsibility, and trust. I can provide example. It's an origin of our story, but it's the best to talk for what you worked on and what you, of course, believe and tried out. For example, if you're a content creator and you want to earn for the creation by sharing on the internet and allowing people to use, read, and reshare, you need to use the platforms which has additional fee in order to withdraw your funds. For example, if you're an influencer on the YouTube, in order to withdraw the funds, you earn there because a lot of people watch your content, which is something you created and you bring to people. It's your value. You need to provide the platform with some money in order to get that value for yourself. Or on example of the content creator, if you're just ordinary person who love to write poems, and whatever you do, there's no enough shares, so not enough people see your content, because everybody at the moment pay for advertising. And at the moment, organic content is not visible. It's just ad after ad. So nothing can be, cannot reach the audience so simply at the moment. And that's what we wanted to change. So as Luuk said, all we needed to do is to provide the infrastructure, open source infrastructure to the people where they can see every move, because it's time-stamped on the blockchain, which is available to everyone, and immediately the trust is there. To share the value, meaning if they want to show the gratitude to some content share or to the YouTube video content or any kind of different content, cause or purpose, charitable or project, they simply need to share that URL, and it's up to them. Do they want to attach some value in the crypto? The value is up to the person. It can be 1, 2, 3, 4 tokens. And the person who is the content creator can claim that value. Nothing is staying to anyone else. So I will give a simple, of course, much simpler example. I can, at the moment, share this URL of the event through the platform and attach the value, for example, I don't know, 50 euros. And then the owner of this link, which is the DoinGud team, will claim that value without intermediary or third party, which will get the cut. You know, it's the pure value transfer. So that's the example I want to raise at the moment. And yeah, I think that all what communities and communities of the future need is potentially a help in education and how to use something. But when infrastructure is there, they need to be empowered how to keep developing the tools they need in order to transfer that value how they see the value should be transferred, without anyone else tipping inside or getting the part of it, because it's peer-to-peer. It's between, I want to give you appreciation of something. No, I will give an example. For example, not to give to Facebook 20% of just me wanting to, send to you something, or an Upwork, and things like that. So I hope later we will have time to talk about this much more. But yeah, that's the example how I see the technology and the cryptocurrencies can be used. So they help communities, and the purpose of, communities which are raising, especially now, those times when COVID started and everyone is separated and alone.
Yeah. Juan, David, did you have something you wanted to jump in with?
No, exactly. I would like, actually, I really like the platform. So there are people sharing links. So I was thanking Nicoline for sharing the Dada art link. So maybe that was it.
Brilliant. It's very interesting, this idea of no intermediaries and nobody to mute you.
Yeah, exactly. No one has a right to do you anything. It's up to you, and you can be free and express yourself fully. And that's the beauty. Like, you're not using someone's platform and then you need to follow the rules.
And so you can tell from my accent maybe that I'm American. I live in Europe now, but it maybe doesn't come so naturally to me. Having grown up, I don't know, in the East Coast in a certain way with a certain number of, I don't know, badges or monikers. Michelle, you're smiling.
We're programmed a little bit differently. I think it's like I said, it's finding a new muscle.
Do you mind visiting that? And I know, Juan David, you could also speak to maybe how things are different in different places.
For sure. Actually, I was thinking
and Anita,
about
you can as well.
the example of one of the principles that we pursue on a status is censorship resistant. That is something that we have been talking about. And since a status is a communication layer, nobody can turn your mail server off. I mean, without entering the technical jargon, we are a decentralized messaging app. Actually, we're working with journalists, and I know this is a topic that is really interesting for you, Wendy. We're in Venezuela. So, for example, over there can be some sort of firewalls. Some journalists have told me that it's hard for them sometimes use Signal. They can restrict the usage of Signal. So a status, since it's a decentralized protocol where every time you log in on the app, you are going to be validating, quote unquote, the messages of different people. So there is a way to send messages without relying on a single points of failure. That's what happened on the centralized world. So here in our region, we are having some countries that are restricting not only the flow of value, but also the flow of information. And one of the missions of the status is creating an infrastructure to protect the human rights. And messaging and having the freedom of speech is central in this case.
And how do we use block? That's protected speech. That's protected communications. How does statusio? Well, how does status, in this case that you just gave us, leverage cryptocurrencies, if at all?
I will give you another example. So we have been working with journalists, so they can talk with each other without having the fear of being tracked, because when you download the app, you don't need any cell phone or email. So there's not link between your anonymity and your real identity. But also here, for example, in Colombia, I'm working with a group of feminists that they are doing activities on the street, and we have the right to go there and to protest in the case against, for example, laws against abortion. So they were organizing some protest, and they were telling me that cops were infiltrating their WhatsApp and Telegram groups. So they were arriving first to the place where they would want to do protest. So the crypto technology is allowing us to prototype a tool for them to create trust among the people that are inside those groups. So we're going to give them NFTs to be part of a conversation. So first, I need to build trust to a repetitive connection on the street. So I know you, I trust you, and I know your anonymity or your pseudonym inside the status. So after a while, I can mint a token, which is something that is unique. Could be transferable, so we're dealing with that part, but we're just like giving them to certain users so they can be part of one group, and they are going to share private information. So the crypto world is giving us this freedom to allow to first transfer information without being listened, but also to create groups where you control who is inside that conversation. That's something that is not happening right now with the tools that we have.
Completely true. And I believe we have examples in our communities and countries, if not in our own, then the first country, the closest one. But what you, Juan, David said, that's this completely the same situation in my country. Infiltrating, using our data, listening to the communication, just to be there before us, to do something before us. And blockchain is helping communities to keep their information inside, share with who they want to be shared, and then create the value, what the value is for them. Maybe that's the non-fungible token. Maybe it's a crypto, just a fungible one. Who knows what it will be in the future, but it's up to them. And that's the beauty of the blockchain as technology.
This idea of no intermediaries taking or being granted the value of our own user data. Can we talk a little bit about that? Maybe Michelle and Luuk, can you give us some thoughts on that?
Luuk, do you want to go, or I can jump in?
You can jump in first.
So I think it's really interesting in being in the US, there's this whole other level. We don't have GDPR. I'm in California, so we have our own privacy legislation that's in place, but the rest of the world, or the rest of the US, basically, every state kind of operates in its own base of privacy. So there's no real overview, but there is a known problem of data, reselling data, monitoring, et cetera. And we know that through all the social media channels. What I think is interesting to watch is there are privacy browsers, there's privacy communities and things like this that are all thankfully there for people to choose and explore, but also the need for education of why people are farming your data and what it means. So, I'm just browsing the internet. But you're not just browsing the internet. What that means from going to shop for whatever, or going to do whatever, or if you check in somewhere online because you want to show your friends you're somewhere, by sharing that, you're giving access to things that people don't even think about, that it's an asset, but it's also privacy. So my kind of soapbox in all of this is educating folks to understand, use private browsers, don't check in on social, don't show where you are on social, like just baseline things that maybe because I've been in this space so long, for me are first nature. It's second nature for a lot of people to think that way. And the more we can help educate, this is why you shouldn't share this personal data, and this is why it's a benefit for you to take a step back and consider what you're giving access to for logins, what you're doing, because it's really easy to hit OAuth, but do you want to do that? And how often do you reset it? So for me, it's more an educational kind of component first and foremost.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So to be honest, I'm not the biggest expert on data, and I also am quite lazy with my own personal data. I would say for the reason that one, I'm living now in the Netherlands, which has quite good GDPR and defenses and whatever. But also because I have kind of sacrificed myself in becoming an advocate of what we're doing here. And in doing that, I need to, yeah, sorry for not having my camera working, but in general, I need to be out there and I need to be vocal and I want to be vocal as well. And I've really thoughtfully made the decision that if I want to take that role in this industry, then I need to be a bit more public than I would like. Because if it was up to me, I would just go back to Curacao, cut off the internet, I know, store. And I guess that's kind of the, not the trash talk, but I think that's kind of the Bitcoin narrative where you just hide and you go into your defensive zone. And I truthfully believe that what we're building in Ethereum and in other Web3 protocols is a good thing. And I even feel really good for being, for a part of my Unchained history, for example, being there, because you can see all the good DAO stuff that I did, and you can see that I'm not someone that goes out and scams people. And maybe one concept that I find really interesting is how you go back to this concept of ownership economy that Juan David mentioned, is data commons, which is something that you're seeing a lot around the Ocean Protocol, where groups of people, prosumers, you could call them, they come together and they gather the data among themselves. And then as a group, they sell that data to whoever research group or whoever would want to access that data. But then it's with consent and they benefit completely from it. Because I think really thinking about positive value, how can we generate positive value with the data and not just exclude others from doing something with it, but finding ways that we can do something with it, which I find really interesting here.
I really appreciate you, number one, sharing with us, notwithstanding your personal preferences, that as a spokesperson, you sort of have to be public and present. Let me ask you a question. When you and I spoke earlier the other day, we talked about these better communities. Are they intended, the 3.0, are they intended to take the place of our current notions of community?
I do think so, yes. And I think it's, there will be different ways that communities will exist. And I mentioned to you, I guess it was earlier this morning, that I'm not the biggest fan of nation states. I think they're weird communities. But in general, I do think that by having these new tools available and having this kind of hybrid world between digital and physical, that we'll see a multitude of new facets of what a community can look like and what it could do. Something that we couldn't have imagined even a year ago. And I think DeFi is a big part of that, by creating liquidity for community value to flow between communities. To not underestimate how big that is, where in 2017, when a project would want to work with me and they would say, I give you tokens, I'd say, no, I'm not taking tokens. I know what happens with these things. I get 1 million, and then when I finally want to sell them, I can only sell 10 of them, and then the price goes through the half and what so. But now with this whole Web3 and DeFi, there is liquidity out there, which means you can actually trade these tokens and trade the value that you created with other people that created value in different ways. And I think that really opens up so much potential for community economies to thrive. And we're just at the start of it. I mean, we're just at step one, but we'll get there.
We'll get there. I want to get onto the topic of what will accelerate adoption. And Michelle, I know we have you for another 6 minutes, so I may start with you if you don't mind. What would allow us to see a greater visibility? And I selfishly want to ask about the U.S. as well.
Sure. So if we look at the U.S., because it's a little bit different, or there are some other areas where the concept of how we hit mainstream adoption of cryptocurrency in general, taking a step back from communities. Education is paramount in understanding what people are investing in and how it can be a store of value for long-term wealth generation, but also near-term a way to optimize and get paid a non-government issued currency. The idea that I've seen over the years that I've been in this space really grow is gig economists, or people who are working for themselves and they're based around the world, but they don't want to get paid in their local currency. A lot of folks I worked with were actually in Venezuela, from a wallet I worked at previously, and a lot of, I spoke with a lot of people. I built the community there, and really loved seeing how they were able to take power back into their own wealth generation and say, no, I don't want to get paid in the local currency. I want to get paid in Bitcoin, or I want to get paid in Dash, or whatever they chose they wanted to get paid in, or they wanted to diversify across multiple. They then saw the volatility of cryptocurrency far less than their native currency volatility. And they also were able to privatize their spending, where they were able to engage with companies outside of their own area and buy and sell things, because they were no longer controlled by the nation state based on their currency. That's something where I saw that years ago and just said, oh my gosh, this is what this was created for. It was that moment where I was like, this makes what I'm doing worth it, and I have to keep doing this. I think in the idea of the US and some of the areas where there's a lot more governmental involvement and regulation to protect consumers from projects that are possibly not the best or not above board, to work together to build education to regulation. So there's always going to be laws and legislation. Instead of working against them, if you can work together to somehow build consensus and educate of, this is why this is actually going to help move things forward, you will see movement. In the US, we have seen, especially after the pandemic, leaps and bounds of improvement and understanding, and a lot of people believing that the need for a digital asset, if it's a CBDC or a stable coin or whatever version, there's a lot of conversations going on behind the scenes that are encouraging that people are actually starting to understand what this is. And it's not just, it's bad, we can't do it. It's okay, I don't understand it. There's a long way to go, but we need to improve upon what we have. And that for me is where we'll hit the mainstream, and the differentiation and the improvement that it can make is so exponential.
That is, it's breathtaking. It is utterly breathtaking. Juan David, what's your thinking on that? What is going to help the world move things forward?
But definitely help us. And I will start with an example of something that we're living here in Colombia. So there have been waves of migration of our dear friends from Venezuela. They are facing since a long time with a hard economic and political situation. So what I will say that is going to increase adoption. And on both sides, I mean, in Colombia, we doesn't have that hyperinflation, but we need to start to use products that are usable. So my answer will go to scalability, something that a lot of protocols are working on, but we also need to create better products for people. I mean, you need to understand what is a blockchain. You maybe need to have a sense of what is this, but when you are using an email, you are not understanding all that's going behind, all the servers and the backend and the front end. No, you're just sending a message. So we need to keep working on that. And in a status, we are doing that. Like, we are talking a lot with our users. And in the case of our region in LATAM, also there is this a cognitive workload that you have to do. If you are saying you have to pay some gas fees, so there are some numbers, 0.0 whatever, and they're going to change, as Luuk said, for example, those volunteers that they were cleaning the beach, why this is moving so much. I just want $150 to do my work. So we need to understand better ways to have those products to work, so people, they don't have to understand of what's behind. They just know they're going to use a product, and they're going to be part of new type of games. This is something that we have been talking about in this part of the conversation, is the Ethereum and blockchain that allows to program money are going to move from competitive games to cooperative games. So that's what I really like, to have this sense of cooperation through products that have a better user experience.
And Luuk, from your perspective, and then Anita will come to you, in your frame, what is it that would allow things to accelerate?
So we've really changed our mind from what we initially had as a grants giving DAO to now trying to create a regenerative economy. Regenerative in the sense that is beyond sustainability. It's really revitalizing the local economy, the local people. So I think it's two things in our case. It's first, it's really important in the economy is that people can make a living in it. Is that they can dedicate all their time and energy and passion and talents as much as they like. And therefore really need to understand how we can bootstrap community currencies in a way that allows us to have maximum impact, but also make sure that this community currency doesn't go downhill and becomes hyperinflationary in any sense or whatever. So it's understanding the primitives that we have a little bit better than we do now, just by testing, by getting real people to use it, seeing how these mechanisms play out. We're working with Will Ruddock in Kenya. He has a community inclusion currency program there that has over, I believe, 40,000 people using a community currency. And they have quite an interesting model, but kind of taking all the learnings together, like Juan David mentioned, it's bringing it kind of in a cooperative way, sharing knowledge, innovating together, and then allowing people to make a living in this new economy. Because especially in what I'm seeing in Curacao is that there are a lot of people that are super interested, but they need to work 40 hours a week to eat, to sleep, to get a roof, and maybe even that's not enough. So giving them an option to say, hey, I want to be part of this new impact economy. I want to be part of this Web3 economy. And that's also what I'm doing in my other venture, which is Prime DAO. We're trying to provide a way for individuals that are working in corporates in whatever environment right now, for them to work professionally in Web3 and understand that this is just or at least for some people, and I would say most people, a better work environment that respects you and your talents way more. So really giving people the potential to work full-time in this space, I think that's the biggest shift that we can help.
Extraordinary. Anita, please.
Exactly what Luke said. Exactly. So to revitalize economy and to allow people, to help people not to be scared that they can create the value, that they can support other people, they can fight for itself, that they can live from what they love to do. So, and also what Luke said previously about the freedom, so mixture of those two. But what I also want to point out is also, which is more focused on communities as a topic, not us or some central body to tell what community needs, but the community itself to have a right tool to do what they need to do. And to build that, and just to, okay, I'm telling now from the perspective of the open source public blockchain, but they pull the request and that can be done. So it's up to them to use the technology how they want to use. But beside that, like Juan, David, and Luke really pointed out, those really good. So all I can do is just agree upon that until it seems that we are on the same page and looking forward to those communities 3.0.
Sorry, Luke, go ahead.
No, please give us more questions.
We touched on this in the other panel, and I want to ask about a permissionless rating system.
In what regard, or?
Yeah. Luke, is that something you can help us with?
Yeah, for sure. So I think you're going towards one of the projects that we're working on, which is called Prime Rating, which is a permissionless system for, in this case, evaluating risk and quality of DeFi projects. But it's also kind of a progress of understanding how we can assess value as a community without needing a central body or a central guidance in that sense. So this could be applied if we succeed in understanding how these models can be bootstrapped. It could be utilized for research, for collective learning, for whatever, but understanding how a group of people can come together, agree on a methodology, agree on almost like a scientific or a paradigm for what they're doing, and then allowing people freely to contribute to that. Almost like, I guess Wikipedia is a better example, because they don't have the weird consensus things and it just flows. But doing it in a more, I would say, structured and rewarding way, where in Wikipedia someone else can come in and basically wreck what you created, and maybe your truth is more truthful. But in this sense, it would really be driven completely by the contributors.
Got it. We have a few minutes left. I would like to ask each of you two things. One is, what do you see as a meaningful challenge ahead? And the second thing is, what is your hope, or what are your hopes for the future around some of the communities, opportunities, and the tools? And maybe, Anita, if you would, can I start with you, the challenge and the hopes?
Yeah, absolutely. As a challenge, I see a war from centralized monopoly organizations and institutions, which are pushing back this decentralized technology. Of course, I'm now seeing it from the standpoint where we are active, meaning giving back power to the people. So people are not the product. People are actually those who use the product, not product itself. And I see that as a big challenge in the future, but with a growing number of people interested in the technology, people interested to learn more, people who are joining events like this, and think that we are on a really good path on doing something meaningful. And also, as a small additional challenge, I see people scared to try something new, which if we look back, I remember back to 2017-18, whenever you hear about the blockchain or cryptocurrencies, the focus of every company was in education, and then product placement, engagement of the people, and so on. And that changed a bit because, of course, people find a way how to use technology so they can monetize, meaning initial coin offerings and what happened on the market. So I think it's a challenge to now switch and go back a few years earlier and again see the power of education, because every company and every team who is working anything with this new innovative technology, because it's still not mainstream, it's there, like Times put it on a cover and sell it as a non-fungible token 2 days ago. But of course, the majority of people need mass adoption is needed. People need to feel comfort. So I need to go to the cafe after the COVID with the friends of mine, drink a beer, and someone of the 3 people I'm sitting with on the table will tell me, like, I bought something, or I see something, or we'll start talking naturally about the technology. So the challenge is time itself and education, meaning we don't have way to sit, because people love to see people in the eyes and feel more comfort when they hear the advice. And also education, meaning that at the moment, everyone is thinking that they know everything about the crypto and the blockchain. So they are providing the advices without proven track or any kind of education. And I mean, that's cool, but yeah, so I see that as a challenges. And also the second one was hopes, right?
Just a hope, yeah.
The hopes are really connected to those challenges, meaning to overcome all of this really, really quickly and soon, meaning that people are empowered to use, try, fork the code, risk, ask the friend, try to build something their own. And my hope is that every individual will be reminded through this technology, where the focus is on decentralization, that we have the power to realize the power they wield, to change something, to do something, to yeah. So that's the hope I'm having, and I can provide one small example because, of course, everybody's understanding examples much better. From my childhood, I'm active in helping people with mental disabilities in my country. And for example, there are some problems with funding. They cannot apply for the government funds and things like that, or they don't know English or technology very well in order to apply for funds somewhere else. This is the technology which can help to overcome this, to delete the boundaries, to help people, to support other people, to support good causes they believe in. So that's my biggest hope, that we don't need to gather as we are learned to be gathered inside the country, as lovers of the UNICEF, as lovers of the Netflix, something which is given to us as a rule. But we can explore new ways to gather with like-minded people, and then we will have tools what we want to do. Like if we really hoping to achieve that. And of course, after such panel with young people who are working hard to deliver this to the global community, everything seems much brighter
and possible. It all seems possible.
Absolutely.
That's the excitement.
Absolutely.
Luuk, may I go to you next? A challenge and a hope?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge and the one that I'm really concerned about is that the majority or those that have the potential to change the future, that they're too comfortable in the present. And that, I mean, COVID was a big wake-up call and everyone seemed open for new ideas. But I'm afraid that if the world is now getting back to the quote-unquote normal, that those excitements about a completely different future will move away, and therefore the resources will move away and the attention. And I'm just I'm afraid living here in the Netherlands, seeing how a good majority of the people have just a good life and they don't really have to worry too much about change. And I mean, their lives are fine. Police is listening. They don't care. It's just everything is good. We have an economy that's running. I mean, almost no unemployment here. And that because of this discomfort, really stopping this renaissance to happen. And that's where my hope is. My hope is that we will, as humans, understand that technology and economy are tools that we can and should utilize to make a better world. And that anything that doesn't do that doesn't contribute to a better world, is nonsense, or at least less important. And I really hope that we as people and we as an industry can make it sufficiently exciting and sufficiently clear for people that, hey, this is something that we can make happen if we do it together. And it would be really wonderful if we do, because I believe it will make the world a better place, not just for those that already have a comfortable life, but also for those that don't. And I think you and I quickly touched about this before, where we had it about you moving from America to Europe, but having kind of that freedom already to be able to make that decision, where so many people are kind of stuck in an economy or an environment where they're so resource poor that they can't even get out of that. And I really hope that we can change that. And that's my kind of hope for Web3 and for community currencies.
And you also made mention of the sort of, I don't have a good word for it right now, but the lack of options, for instance, of getting out of a minimum wage job, that just doesn't seem like there could possibly be any options. And that Communities 3.0 could provide, for the first time and in a very new way, some opportunities.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for that, Luuk. I appreciate it. And Juan David, may you give us a challenge and a hope?
A meaningful challenge, and something I will suggest to the audience, is to check what it doesn't mean to slay the Moloch. The Moloch is this mythological monster that doesn't allow to coordinate ourselves. So every time we try to fight against climate change, if we want to give vaccines to everyone with this COVID, we cannot coordinate ourselves because there are more powerful groups, there are incentives that are not aligned. And there's a great conversation. There's a podcast on Bankless with Kevin Owocki, where they were talking about how the crypto world, the crypto tools can allow us to slay them all, like to coordinate, because yeah, we're humans. We are not defined anymore by our nationality. Obviously, that defines a lot of our background, but right now that we are interconnected and that we can scale trust, we have for the first time a way to coordinate through value in a broad sense. So my hope also is to having those tools to beat one of like the crisis that we are facing, that is climate change. So it's super excited to see what Luuk has been doing in Curacao, but also, for example, talking about one of my colleagues in Status, Simona Pop. She was doing something called Bounties for Basura, which is quite similar. They did this in the Philippines. So you have a technology, you have some resources, and you can, as we have been talking, transfer value to the wallet to each person and to give them the incentive to take care of their surroundings. So my hope is that this way to coordinate ourselves can allow us in these hard problems to solve as the human race. So that will be my hope in the future to solve with this technology.
Brilliant, brilliant, and really powerful image. Yeah. To each of the three of you, Anita and Luuk and Juan David, thank you so much for spending your time with us and sharing your thoughts and insights. It's great to have you with us. We'd love to invite you back again, and we look forward to seeing you soon. So thank you. Have a good evening or day.
Thanks so much. Have a good one, everyone.
And for all the crew of DoinGud, I mean, you're doing good with this
you're really doing good.
event, and to basically to the people on the other side of the screen, just like to share this enthusiasm that we have to create, and there are the tools. So feel free to reach to us, I guess, on Twitter and their different medias. As we can help, we are happy to do that.
Amazing. We will take you up on that.
Absolutely. Like, open a group, keep us there. We are open for the questions and anything, because it's a reason why we are talking about the communities. We love communities. That's what we are focused on. So feel free.
It's a great reminder. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right. All the best. Bye.